hold on.
Stephen Godek from Danbury. Just got a quick question. At $21,000 per student in the town of Danbury, guesstimated, for their education, I'd like to know what the savings would be of closing Danbury Elementary School to the school district.
What was the question?
The savings if the Danbury Elementary School was closed.
Okay. Does anybody?
As to the taxpayers, for everybody in here, because it's all part of the budget.
Is that something you could address? Or?
Danbury is about $1.1 million cost in this current year. If you add back in the additional transportation costs and you factor in the staff that would be required to go to, say, for example, Bristol Elementary School, we figured it would range in the neighborhood with keeping Danbury at minimal heat, because we still would have to maintain the building until it was determined what happened to it, that it would be in the neighborhood of $600,000, $700,000.
So about a $400,000 savings. Excuse me, wrong math.
Go ahead.
$600,000 or $700,000 savings.
Thank you.
Janet?
Janet Cody, Bristol. I want to speak to the taxpayer portion of the cut to health benefits. Through a graphic that was provided by Marie Ross when I visited her office, the information that was shared was, and I believe you have a graphic if you were able to put it up, the employee taxpayer and gross amount for this policy change was on that graphic. And single payers will be responsible for 5% or $306.14 per year. The taxpayers will be responsible for 95% of that, which is $5,816.66 per year. For a single person on this plan, the taxpayers is paying that per person. I myself am unemployed, paying COBRA at $1,500 a month. Our taxes in Bristol have gone up. We're paying $500 a month for taxes right now. The taxpayers in this area are struggling. It's time for the district to look at the staff paying their share. In this case here, we've come to a point where we've been paying benefits. And if we look at the two-person and the family, we are looking at the $15,000 range, because everybody's talking about the person that might have to pay the school to work there. We are talking about a two-person plan where that employee will be responsible for $3,520 plus 66 cents. If they opt the family plan, they will be responsible for $78.0670. Well, the taxpayer in each of these things will be $8,725.10 for the two-person plan and $8,725.10 for the family plan. So we're still paying more than 50% on a family plan. We're still paying about 3/4, more than half. The graphic is there. The truth is there. The only question I have is, have we already contracted for this plan? All right, so discussion could stay open, because I would move not to discuss it further if we've already contracted.
No, there was, I think, a negative head movement I saw up here, so I believe that there's no contract as yet for that plan.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Hello,
sir.
I'm Dylan Collins from Bristol, and I would just like to address two things quickly. When it was first said that schools that had a lower budget than ours were doing better as schools, that raised a flag to me, and more so when Mr. Robinson was talking. What I noticed was that there isn't the same, correlation and causation are not the same thing. Saying that a school is doing better than us and has a lower budget does not necessarily mean that that is why. So we can't just lower our budget and expect to start doing better as a school. And I feel like that is another reason why the data may be unbalanced.
Okay.
There was one other thing I wanted to address, and maybe Ms. Wendelbo can address what I just said afterwards, but what I wanted to say was, Also, there's a lot of talk about this being a community thing, and that's why the taxes need to go down. And I agree that taxes may be too high, but by lowering the tax burden, it's raising the burden on the teachers who may lose their jobs and on the support staff who will have more to pay and may get their jobs cut as well. So just saying, is it ethical to lower your burden by raising the burden on others? Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Sherry Boynton from New Hampton.
You got to move closer to the microphone, Sherry.
Sorry. Sherry Boynton from New Hampton. I would just wonder if we could put a time limit on our individual speakers. Some people seem to have a little bit too much information, and I think we need to have other people have chances to speak. My other big question is, when we do all get done speaking today on this article, and we vote, are we done then, or is it still available to bring the article up a second time? Was there a reason to move this to be number one, so that half the crowd goes home, and then the other half, who wants either for or against, can stay and bring the article up a second time?
The answer your question, I don't think that there was any motive other than to try to serve the people who came out here today to hear the article, and most people did for this particular article. So, but this is what my intention was, and I've already made an arrangement to do that, is after we do take our final vote on the article, was to take a motion to restrict reconsideration at today's meeting, and so that it couldn't be brought up again at today's meeting.
Thank you.
And would... With regard to the speakers, you know, I do give some leeway to the speakers. My experience, and I say this usually at the meetings, is, you know, the best speech is a good 3-minute speech. You know, the best speech is something like the Gettysburg Address, as opposed to having a State of the Union address. So the so my most people have some succinct points to make. I gave the chair of the Budget Committee a fairly lengthy period of time, so when Mr. McKinney spoke, I gave him a fairly large period of time sort of in response. But if I find people that are going long, I will cut them off, and I just let you know that, okay? Go ahead.
Okay. Tim Farmer from Danbury. One thing that seems to be lost here from what I'm hearing is that taxes are out-of-pocket expenses. You know, they're for every one of us. And every year I'm paying an extra $100, $200 a year. The last 2 years I haven't gotten a raise. So, I mean, this sob story is we all have it. And we just got a substantial equivalent to what you guys are asking reduction in our health care benefits this year. So no raises and a substantial cut. And my taxes have been going up steadily. You know, and that's right across the board. I talked to a guy yesterday that's got to take 5 weeks off this year, no pay. So I mean, it's right across the board. I do feel bad about it, you know, but that's the way it is. It's money coming out of my pocket, going into theirs. It's just, you know, that's the reality of it. We're talking reality here, so let's, you know, realize that taxes are out-of-pocket expenses for everybody that pays it, pure and simple. And I just want to thank the Budget Committee for getting in there and doing what they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Hara?
How did you know my name? I just have a couple of questions.
You still need to identify yourself.
Oh, I still, okay. Andy O'Hara from Bristol.
Thank you.
I fell down. One of my main questions is, if the Budget Committee can help me or the school board can help me, we're sending 8 disciplinary students up to Plymouth on a daily basis, supplying the bus, a driver, and bring the 8 students up from their homes, delivering them to Plymouth, and then bringing them back at the end of the day for the whole year. What does it cost per student for them to go to school up in Plymouth for disciplinary reasons?
Okay, yeah, if you want to answer that.
We have some students who have a special education plan, individual education plan, possibly labeled as emotionally handicapped. It's not just disciplined students. And in our current structure, and I could address this because it'll come up later, but I can wait till it does. We restructured the current staff we had in order to provide an alternative learning area in our school, and we reallocated some funds to put in a second assistant principal for student support. We brought 5 of those students back so that we could support them in a way we would not have to send them up to Plymouth. We do pay $35,000 in tuition and approximately $7,000 in transportation when we've done everything we can with the current resources and structure that we have, and we have to send them up to the Mount Prospect Academy.
So that's per student.
Yes, it is.
And how much of it is the parents paying for?
As much as parents pay for any other student in this class, whatever, in this entire district, whatever they pay in their
So
taxes.
it's coming out of everybody here's
Yes, it is.
taxes
Yes, it is.
to send them up there.
We do not charge parents extra if they have special needs for their children.
No, not if they have special needs, but aren't some of them
These are special
disciplinary?
needs. These are special needs.
Oh, there's disciplinary or special needs.
Not just your run-of-the-mill ordinary discipline. These are students who have exceptional emotionally, they're actually qualified.
Couldn't that be done here in Bristol in a room with teachers? And here we have, they say that they're getting rid of teachers that they don't need. Couldn't that be done right here for less money and use the teachers we have to do it?
There are some other districts that we are compared to on the District Data Comparison Task Force who have set up alternative schools in their district using a building that they have on campus, and they staff it with people who are qualified to handle some of these types of situations. But where we send our children, it's the Beckett Family of Services. They have more, their class sizes range from 6 to 8 children. They have a huge counseling staff available. Those students go to school on one day and go to vocational experience on the alternate days. It's a complete program that we do not, we've actually studied, looked into it, and that is the reason why for this year I did restructure it in order to provide alternative learning areas. And as I said, we brought 5 of those students that we were paying for last year back and saved the taxpayers money to do that. But at this point, we have neither the facility nor the administrative structure to start another school in order to have the capacity to handle their needs according to the law.
Are we supplying them with insurance to go up there?
No.
No.
I mean, all of our students are covered with the liability insurance for the district.
So it's around, it's over $40,000 per student. So, all right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Westfall?
Todd Westfall, Alexandria. I just want to address some of the issues that Mr. McKinley brought up and some of the comments that were made regarding the data. First of all,
You need to speak up a little, Todd, I think.
I'm sorry. I think, is that better?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Make sure
I
you
can't
keep-
get much closer to
Yeah, just
the
keep your
microphone.
voice up. That's-
Okay. You know, I live in the real world too. You know, the reality for me is that the organization that I worked for scaled down from 50 people to less than 10. So I'm now self-employed. I don't have insurance. My insurance is if I get sick and have huge hospital bills, you know, my house maybe is enough to pay for, you know, covering me. That's where I'm at. That's where a lot of people are out here in the real world. So, you know, you're not probably going to get a lot of sympathy from me regarding that, but you know, I want our district to treat people fairly. I have an obligation as a taxpayer to pay for the student's education, and I hope it's a good one. I want us to pay for a great education for our kids, but I don't have an obligation to employ more people than we need or to pay more for their health insurance than other districts do. So we need something that's fair. That's all we're asking for here, is that this be fair and equitable. If we're overpaying in areas, it needs to be adjusted. That's what the data from the task force is all about. We should be looking at that, looking at other schools and seeing what they're paying. We should be competitive so that we get the same type of people that they get and get the same results that they get. I'm not sure if that's been done. It's a great question to ask. If I know that somebody said that the data task force data showed that we paid the second best benefits of any of the districts compared. But I don't know where this adjustment would put us in that range. We have to be careful that we treat our employees fairly. We have an obligation to do that as taxpayers as well, I believe, but fairly. And right now, it's the other way, and I'm sorry to tell you that, but it is. And the reality is some cuts have to be made. Hopefully they're the right cuts. The school board has the ultimate power here, and whatever cuts are made, they can decide based on that data, based on what they know. Perhaps the cuts proposed by the superintendents might not be the ones that they ultimately decide to make, but cuts certainly have to be made. The other thing is, this data is not just supported, or the cuts to staff are not just supported by our data, but also by studies like the study done by the Gates Foundation, which showed that overstaffing does not equate to better education. Overpaying doesn't equate to better education. We proved it, certainly, in the Data's task force, that our results do not stack up just because we spent more money. Now, a couple of those districts that do spend more money, for instance, Bow sends 96.6% of its kids to college, and Guilford sends nearly 80% of its kids to college. They're great results, and perhaps we can find out how they're doing that. But right now, we're spending about what they're spending, but we're not getting those results. So we have to pull this back. We've got to get it back to where we can operate the district, get the results that districts of similar size and capabilities can get, and then maybe we can target some additional monies towards getting academic results, and I think everybody in the district would be happy. But right now, we've got a problem on our hands. So this isn't just data that's backed up here, it's backed up nationally. This is not how you get a good education for your kids.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Paul Manganello, Bristol, New Hampshire. I'd like to expand on or just make a succinct comment to the previous gentleman from Danbury and the costs of out-of-pocket expenses for everyone going up. And in reality, the way I see the cost that's associated with the insurance packages that are provided not only to the school, but as well to the municipality of Bristol is nothing more than the buzzword that's out there in the news every day. It's a taxpayer bailout for your response, for providing that level of healthcare insurance when everyone else out there is providing that same level of service or has been reduced in their own out of their own pocket and personal expenses.
Thank you.
Good morning. I have a written motion.
You have an amendment?
Yeah. And
Yeah, first of all, what's your name?
Okay. Good morning. My name is Tom Arnold. I'm from the town of Bristol.
Okay.
And my motion, should I read it out loud?
Yeah, you read it.
My motion is to reject the 21.597525 budget and vote for the 20 million baseline budget, 1.597 million less than recommended by the school board and budget committee. Future budget increases shall be tied to specific increases in academic performance.
Okay. So you're looking for your amendment is to amend the amount in the article down to $20 million.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And is there a second to that? Who was that? Don Milbrand in Bristol. Don Milbrand in Bristol made that motion. Seconded the motion, excuse me. Okay, now what's going to happen is we're going to address the amendment only, okay?
Shall I bring this up to you, or?
Yes, you need to bring that up to me, or get it to me one way or the other. Then you can go back to the microphone and just explain your motion.
Thank you.
Just so everybody understands, it's to amend the proposed budget that's spelled out in your warrant article. Currently, it's proposed that the budget be $21,597,525. This would amend that on Article 7 to appear on your warrant as $20 million.
That's correct, sir. Number one, I applaud everyone's efforts to bring the budget from 23.9 mil down to a level lower than that. However, the school board budget committee has done extensive analysis. They've looked at various pieces of data. No data is 100% correct. They came out with a number, $20 million, that they publicly said was a good number nationally and also across 16 districts that they looked at. And then I heard we agreed with the school committee here on the left that, oh, well, the 21.5, we decided to go along with them. I value independence, I value critical analysis, and I think that if $20 million, which I think is a lot of money, is good enough for a lot of areas, is good enough for us. My last point is that if I looked at the two proposed budgets, one of them is 21.597 and the second is 21.7, the real difference is $100,000 in round numbers. And I've heard a lot of folks say implicitly that you're putting the burden on non-bargaining unit employees. I think the time may come, which is now, to really think outside the box and consider the bargaining unit agreement and other items in there to get us to the $20 million. There are a lot of folks, and I empathize with you. In my career, I've been laid off 5 times, and I got number 6 staring at me in April. It is not pretty, but unfortunately, we didn't build this construct, and it's something that we have to live with. Okay. I do believe in value, and I believe in paying for performance, period. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to be discussing the amendment only, so Marcia, if you want to talk to the amendment, I'll call on you. If you don't want to talk to the amendment, then you might not want to. I'm not going to call on you.
So do I go to the end of the line to speak later? Or?
I think you wait until you talk to the general budget, unless you want to talk on this amendment, okay? Sir, do you want to talk on the amendment?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Milbrand, you're on that side. You seconded the motion anyway.
Yeah, that's why I figured I would talk. Thank you.
Let's do it today. Okay.
Sorry, didn't have this sign.
Why don't you start talking? You can sign later.
All right. Donald Milbrand. I'm from Bristol, and I seconded this amendment because I am very confident that the Budget Committee came up with that number by looking at all the lines. And I know from experience as a selectman in Bristol that the way the things work here in New Hampshire is the people vote on a budget and give you an amount of money. As a selectman, we have to take that money and use it to give the town the services that they provide. This is no different here. If you're given the $20 million, I'm sure that the Budget Committee has come up with good reasons for that, and I have strict confidence that the school board can make the proper cuts to see that happen and actually make it work. I would further encourage them to look at some of the unfunded mandates that might be given by the federal government and just deny them and not do them. If they come back, then too bad. Let them take you to court and prove that if you're going to do an unfunded mandate from the federal level, you can't do that. Luckily, the state has a amendment in their constitution saying that they can't do that. And I would encourage any unfunded mandates coming from the state to be rejected by the school board and let the school board run the school the way they should best see fit for Bristol.
Thank you. You want to speak to the amendment?
No.
You want to speak to the amendment? Mr. Rotnecker?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Moderator, members of the committees.
Can
I believe that
identify yourself.
Eric Rotnecker from Bristol. I believe, yes, we definitely need to get it down to 20 million. I believe we looked at 16 different school districts, and most of those are at about 18 million. Now, as far as the academics go, I'd like to speak to that for 1 second. I believe it's because we have a heavy burden of special education, special educated needs kids, that's bringing our levels down because we can't separate those scores out. It's unfortunate that the teachers and the administration won't renegotiate their contracts, so obviously we have to go after the only thing that we can, which is to support staff. I'm not fully in favor of all of that, but again, just like a number of people have mentioned, there are a lot of people struggling as far as trying to take care of their own insurance. I know people who have dropped their insurance, dropped their life insurance in order to pay their taxes so they don't lose their houses. And what's happening? They're paying for someone else's 97%, and that's not right. I believe that, yes, I think we can get this down to 20 million, but before we go ahead with that, we need to find out how much more we can cut and where those cuts will be coming from before we go ahead with this 20 million amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. You speaking to the amendment, Mr. Favorite?
Steve Favorite, Bristol. I had the opportunity to spend some time in Missouri through the Joplin tornado, Sedalia, and the floods in the Mississippi and Missouri. Got a chance to talk with a lot of school districts, especially Joplin, which of course lost 5 of their schools, and we got them back up and working and put back together. Did also ask a lot of questions about how they run their budgets. And one thing that stood when I came back home was to take a look at what do we do about substitutions? And I don't think it's ever been really addressed, so I decided to do some digging this past 2 days and pull out some old records of school boards. And the last we started back in 2000, I went back to 2004, 2005 budget, and it was $91,786 in substitution. It's called the substitution/temporary employees. And this is on the budget account number 1100, subaccount 120. And today, for 2011, 2012, it has reached $145,000 for substitution. That means teachers, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, and if that's the case, if you took the current $145,000 and we pay $65 per substitution, if I'm correct, per day?
The sub rate is $65 per day for a short term, and it's a higher number for a long term. So, for example, if you have an employee out on an extended medical leave, you would pay you would have one substitute come in for that extended time. If they're going to be in the same classroom for an assignment of greater than 20 days, 20 days is this number correct?
Yeah.
20 days, then the rate goes up to,
Okay.
I want to say it's $183 approximately. It's the same as the base step on the bachelor scale of the collective bargaining agreement. And you have to have an HQT or a highly qualified teacher, a fully certified teacher, for a long-term substitution.
Okay. So this is all based on substitution monies are for substituting for teachers, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we just took just the basic, $145,000, it's allotted for the 2011-2012 budget, and we have, I'm just using the $65 round figure to work with, that comes out to about 2,230 days of substitution total. Not that it's all used, not that it's all directed directly into that, but still comes back in, if you do just the basics, about 12 teachers are out per day if you use the 180 days. It still is a question, is there's a lot of money in this package of substitution that's going on in our district. Are we not getting, or are we having so many sick teachers? I mean, there is a staff of 141 current, and we're going to 134. But if you look at the average of how many teachers are out per day, there are substitute teachers that I have talked with or heard from that they're here almost on a permanent basis, at least 3, if not 4 days a week. So if we could address, since the teachers have not given in on their contract as of yet in regards to their health insurance, because my wife's went up 35%, and now she's now working, of course, at the Humane Society 4 days a week to subsidize hers. It happens to be a little bit of a give and take world. This is not an entitlement. So this is one area that I think should really be addressed. We talked about getting our class status up, and this would be an area. Thank you.
Thank you. Not speaking on the amendment?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
On the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Simon Barnett, and I'm on the Budget Committee. I'd like to clarify a little bit that the Budget Committee is recommending at 21,597. There was much discussion. A lot of the members wanted a $20 million budget, but we could not find the right areas to cut the money out of. The Budget Committee is supporting a 21,597, not a $20 million budget, because we had no idea where that money would come from. Thank you.
Okay. Speaking to the amendment?
I think so. I just want some clarification. Deirdre Conway, Alexandria.
Yeah.
I'm the president of the Newfound Area Teachers Association,
Yep.
and we did negotiate this year. We settled our contract, and we were not asked to reopen. So all the comments made that the teachers are not agreeing to anything is untrue.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the amendment? Okay, Mr. Martin?
Thank you.
You're talking to the amendment now.
Yes, I am.
You're going to stick strictly to the amendment. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I better think of what did I say? Yes, I am speaking to the amendment, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Don't hold me in contempt.
No, not yet. Go ahead. Yeah, you need to identify yourself.
Yes, Neil Martin, Bristol, been here 35 years. I'm a teacher as well, taught in the UMaine and the University of New Hampshire systems. I have a son who went to school here, as well as a daughter and another son.
Okay.
My middle son teaches, and this is to the amendment, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I have a son-in-law who is also a teacher. The only point I want to make, I thought it was rather interesting. Tough times hurt people in many ways. We're talking about an amendment to cut back, and we also heard a lot about the problems of the people who have to look to us to support them in making their insurance payments. I think it might be a good idea. Why don't we open up and have insurance payments that we as taxpayers make to anybody from NOK who's fired, who's out of work? That certainly doesn't sound logical, and I think we have to consider that doing that for those unfortunate folks who are in the teaching business and their insurance is cut, I don't know above our paying taxes that we need to support that. I don't know. It just seeming to me a point of logic that I think everybody should consider. Do we have that further responsibility that we don't exercise to anybody else who's put out of a job? That's all. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Okay, you ready to... You haven't spoken to the amendment yet.
Not to the amendment.
Okay.
Thanks, Ned. Todd Westfall again. My feelings, my opinion on the amendment, I think it's too far, too deep a cut, to be honest with you. I believe that we could be at a $20 million budget based on the data that was collected. Certainly, we could. But to get there in 1 year would be very, very difficult, and I think it might risk, the education of our students. That's not to say that I would support an increase if anybody brings an amendment to an increase. So, don't confuse our non-support of a cut down to 20 million as a support for an increase. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Mattson.
How are you, Ned? Oh, hi. Kerry Mattson from Bristol. Two things. First is this $20 million number did not come out of extensive analysis on the data task force. The $20 million was talked about well before the data task force. It's in the minutes of the budget committee. So they just pulled that number out of the sky. I do think that, and then the data, when they did analysis on the data, they came up with the budget that's before you. So I think that the amendment is a bad idea, but people who do think it's a good idea, I would like maybe for the school board to address exactly where all those cuts would come from, with some specifics if possible.
Okay. Does the school board have any thought as to where those cuts would come from? Okay.
On September 13th, the Budget Committee set a goal of $20 million. So Dan Russner and I went through all of the legal requirements that we would have and went to the board and said, if there was a $20 million, these are the cuts that we would have to enact, and we would have to enact all of them. We would have to close the Danbury Elementary School. We would have to put the 5th grade into the middle school. We would have to cut sports at the JV level and the B teams. We would have to provide no health insurance to any support staff whatsoever. And we would have to cut a total, including some of those cuts, of 26.5 teachers. So that was the analysis that we did. And in doing the further cuts, it raises, you heard Ms. Wendelboe read the class sizes. I think you got 2 of them off. You said 11 and there was 21. We wouldn't have classes as low as 11. But we would have to put, the state, they have a formula for minimum standards for school approval. So we would have to, right now, the law says the state recommends class sizes of no more than 20 for K through 2 students, but you may have up to 25. So we maxed them up at 25. And they recommend no more than 25 students in 3 through 12, but you may have up to 30. So we maxed them up to 30. So that is how we came up with the numbers for the $20 million. We called it the scenario. We never called it a recommendation. When the budget hearing occurred on January 11th, the Budget Committee discussed the 21.597. At the end of that meeting, Ms. Wendelboe had a Budget Committee meeting, which was posted, and it is their duty to set the final number. And at that time, she went through each one of those lines in that scenario that I just spoke of. And the Budget Committee, when she said, let's vote, how many of you are in favor of closing Danbury Elementary School? That vote was 0 to 7. When she said, how many people are in favor of no JV and no B team sports? That vote was 2 to 5. And when she, what was the third thing you asked? And no insurance for the support staff, and that vote was 0 to 7. So the Budget Committee, as Simon said, never did identify where further cuts would come. And in my scenario, which again, last year you recall that we did the Honeywell energy upgrade, we were spending $90,000 of fuel, 90,000 gallons of fuel oil. This year we're down to 63,000 because of that savings. We have, over the years, tried to be efficient in every single area of our budget. This is the final, we're down to personnel, and those are the cuts that we would have to enact in order to come to that 20 million. And I believe the Budget Committee voted in agreement. The motion to go to 20 million was then rescinded, and the Budget Committee voted on a 7-0, and one of the Budget Committee members was absent that night, voted 7-0 to go with the school board's recommendation.
Thank you. Please defeat this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. Chris?
Chris Dahl of Peaked Hill. Marie Ross answered a couple of questions that I had, which was kind of how the Budget Committee voted. I continue to see this problem not only here at the school district level, but at the local levels, and that's the fact that we as the communities here elected these officials to do a job. And I think Ms. Wendelboe said it best at the beginning, is this is step one of maybe getting to a lower figure, and I can't support $20 million. As she said earlier, you start here and you do an assessment and see how it goes. This is a pretty substantial cut that we have on the board here already, from 23.9 to 21.5. And it just doesn't make any sense. And for someone to stand up here and say that, you know, the Budget Committee said $20 million, and now they're just a bunch of, and this is my term that I'm using, a bunch of sheep and going along with the school board, I'd be offended if I were any of you sitting there on a Budget Committee right now that somebody would say that out here in public, because I feel that you guys put a lot of hard work and effort into this budget. And I think this is a good starting point, and let's stick with 21.5. Let's see where that gets us, and let's do a reassessment. And I thank you for the hard work that you've done.
Okay, thank you. Are you ready to vote? Okay. Okay. You ready to vote? Okay. This is going to be on the amendment. I'm going to do my very best to do this on a voice vote if we can do this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to try to do it on a voice vote. What I probably will do is, if you'll excuse me for a second, I probably will go next door, because I haven't appointed anybody over there to be a deputy moderator, and probably should have done that. But we'll do it on a voice vote. I'll get a sense here, get a sense next door, and then come back and let you know. If I can't get a sense here, then it doesn't make any sense for me to go next door. But the motion on the floor, it's an amendment. The amendment is to change Article 7. Instead of appropriating an amount of $21,597,525, this amendment would change that appropriation to a flat $20 million. Oh, okay. Okay, I can get a show of hands. That will save me making a trip. So, well, maybe not such a good idea. Maybe they don't want to show their hands. I don't know. We'll see. Everybody understand what you're voting on. You're just voting on the amendment, not the article itself. You're voting to change the budget amount from the $21,500,000 down to $20 million. Everybody understands? So if you vote yay, you'll be voting in favor of that amendment, and that article will be changed. If you vote nay, the article stays just the way it's written in your warrant today. Everybody understand that? Yes.
The amendment that I heard spoken had a second component which has not been addressed, and I'm wondering if that's included in what's going to be voted on. The amendment had a component that said any future raises would be tied to performance.
Right. The amendment does indicate that future budget increases shall be tied to specific increases to academic performance. Frankly, I don't know how enforceable that would be, even if we pass that. So, but I guess you can decide whether or not you want to vote on that or not. So, it did include that particular provision. So, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. Yeah. I have to say, I want everybody to have an opportunity to participate. So if you just give me 1 minute, I'll be right back. Okay, by voice vote, the chair rules that the amendment is defeated. Both bodies seem to concur in their vote here today. So, and okay, that brings us back to the original amendment. So our discussion is again now back to the original amendment. Excuse me, the original article. Excuse me. Yes, sir.
Miles Sinclair, Town of Groton. Mr. Moderator, I also have an amendment that I would like to propose.
Okay, go ahead.
Beyond that, I can speak directly to the amendment, but I also have some additional comments, so I don't know how you would like me to address those.
Well, what you should do is, if you want to make an amendment and you have it in writing, you can make your amendment. If it's seconded, then we address the amendment. And then we'll address the amendment only at that point in time.
Okay. I do have an amendment. It is in writing, and that is to amend the operating budget in Article Number 7 to increase it by $350,000 to a new total of $21,847,525, if I may approach.
You may. Is there a second to that? Second. Okay, who seconded that?
I second that. Susan Colby, Bristol.
Okay. Yeah. Susan Colby was the seconder on that, and Mr. Sinclair made the original motion. Okay. Okay, the amendment has been made. This is to move and amend the dollar amount of the budget. The current budget amount, which is in the original article, is $21,597,000. This would increase the budget amount to $21 million. And I think that there was an error with regard to the calculation, but I think it was $21,947,525.
And I apologize for the error. Epping High School, class of 77.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm presuming that, Ms. Colby, you're in agreement to change. Yeah, yeah, and there was a little mathematical error, but you still want to second that? Okay. Okay, Mr. Sinclair.
And to speak to the amendment itself at this point, like I mentioned at the budget hearing, I try to be a fair, objective person. There is fair, there is unfair, there is right, there is wrong. And as I mentioned at the budget hearing, the bulk of the savings for the reduction in the budget, $700,000 of that, comes at the backs of the support staff. And the comment I made at the budget hearing was that they were being fed to the lions. In my opinion, it's unfair, it's wrong, it's a disproportionate share that they're being faced to bear. And the way that that should be better handled is to grandfather existing employees, to revamp benefits offered to new hires, and to resolve additional savings through attrition of people either leaving the school district or resigning to move on to other places. And I think this is relevant to this issue as well. The woman that was the president of the Teachers Association indicated that the contract was settled. I'm a retired dairy police officer. I had 20 years there, very much involved with the patrolman union then, and was president for 5 years, vice president for about 3 years before that, and very intimate with contract language, negotiations, discussions, and difficult economic times. What they have agreed on is what they call status quo. I disagree that that means you have settled your contract, because when you have settled your contract, you've signed a contract, you have a new agreement, a successor agreement. That is not the case here. Their contract will expire June 30th of this year, and at some point in the future, what they have done at this point is status quo means no change in the contract. Implementation, wages, nothing. It stays as it was. Well, if the contract would expire, that exact same thing happens regardless. So what has happened here by this status quo determination, at some point in the future, this contract period will have to be covered. And by leaving the door open, which is what they have done here, is there will be an ability, whether it's acted upon in the future or not remains to be seen, but there will be an ability to renegotiate that and have any increases or decreases in wages and benefits retroactive to cover this time frame. People need to be aware of that. It's not that, we've agreed not to take a raise, not to have any impact on our health benefits for this year, and that can never change, because it very much can. Do you have the slide, Mr. Rosen, that shows the health care benefits for the teachers' union? As far as the amount of co-pays, you had that at the budget hearing. I'm hoping you have that here today. And if you could you please put that on the overhead?
Are you dealing with the teachers' union, or are you dealing with the cuts in the amendment? I guess that's the question here.
Well, at this point, I think they're both intertwined.
Okay, because the amendment amount doesn't deal with the teachers' health benefits, as I understand it.
Well, it leads to the bigger argument, the additional comments that I had.
Okay.
So if you could please indulge me for a moment.
For a moment, yeah.
And as he's looking for it, again, it gets back to the disproportionate share that's being asked of the support staff.
Right. So maybe while he's doing that, you could explain how what this calculation amounts to. What's it for?
It's because, as I understand it, $700,000 is being saved by lessening the benefits that are provided to the support staff. The $350 amendment is intended to have that.
$350,000.
$350,000, to have that, to make it more manageable for the employees and their families.
Okay.
And I understand that the school board would not be bound by this amendment passing with that intention. But if that is the will of the people, I think the people would be asking the school board to do just that, to lessen that burden.
Okay, is that the slide you're looking for?
Yes, it is. And could, Mr. Rosen, could you point out what the existing, well, it does say current plan.
The column on the far left that says current plan. That's the plan that both members of the collective bargaining unit and support staff and other employees currently are offered by the district. The proposed budget is built to include the support staff being offered what's called Plan 6 to the far right. So that gives you some idea of the change in the structure or the nature of the benefit. You'll also see the cost, and those are monthly total costs. That's before any premium sharing arrangement. By type of plan, the bottom 3 lines. And so the 2 ways the $700,000 change in budget is achieved is to take the support staff from being offered the plan on the left to the plan on the right, maintaining the premium sharing arrangement that currently exists, whereby if you make between $0 and $15,000, the district pays 95% of the premium. The employee pays $5,000, $15,000 to $30,000, it's $92,800. Over $30,000, it's $88,12. But as you see, there's different costs for a single person plan or a 2-person plan or a family plan. And as has been said before, whereas currently the district pays that 95 or 92 or 98, or excuse me, 88%, no matter which plan you choose, single, 2-person, or family. On the proposed budget for the support staff, the district would pay 95, 92, or 88% of a single plan, 95, 92, or 88% of 75% of a 2-person plan, and the employee is responsible for the incremental difference to the full cost of a 2-person, and likewise a similar amount for the incremental cost up to a family. Have I explained that to your satisfaction?
Yes. And what I would like to do is just, for the people in this room to take a look at the current plan on the left and ask themselves, how many of you have only $5 office visit co-pays, only $5 special office visit co-pays, $25 emergency room co-pays, and no out-of-pocket deductible whatsoever?
Okay.
And again, getting back to the interrelation and the issue with the contracts, from my perspective, teachers have a very excellent, sweet health plan.
Right.
I believe that if they were to open up the negotiations and make modest concessions, they can lessen the impact on the very support staff that they depend on to educate our children. Due to the difficult economic conditions we remain mired in, it is the time for those kind of concessions. The state, through Governor Lynch, had told the state unions, we need concessions or we're going to lose X amount of employees. They tried to call him on his bluff. Employees got laid off to meet that budget target. The city of Manchester went through much the same thing. They wound up laying off firefighters and not filling vacant police positions. Again, the unions seemed to think that the mayor, Ted Gackis, was bluffing. He was not. Once the layoffs were implemented, now they're crying foul. You have to recognize and react to the existing conditions.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to be speaking to this amendment, and just so everybody understands, it's to increase the budget amount from $21,597,000 to $21,947,000. Basically, you're